Hey guys, this is Max Steinberg with SaberSim, and SaberSim has just released some really cool features to the lineup builder that I'm really excited to show you that are a really different approach than other lineup builders use to control the players in your lineups, the stacks in your lineups, the game stacks in your lineups. I mean, some lineup builders don't even let you control some of these things, and we do. And it's really, really cool. I'm really excited to just get into it. So right here, we have SaberSim's default projections for week 1. I really have not made many adjustments to them at all. And for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to talk about what players I would actually adjust, but talk about how to make adjustments post-build that allows you to control things without having to worry about that. So one thing that you're going to see in a lot of lineup builders is this sort of tab that we call stacking. Maybe some other lineup builders might call it something else, but it's basically these rules that these lineup builders have that allow you to do things, create lineups in the ways that are popular. For example, let's say we want to stack. Okay, well, we have a stacking rule that allows you to make sure that every lineup, all your lineups, must include at least 3 players on the same team. And that ensures that you get that correlation that you want between the quarterback and the receivers and have highly correlated lineups. Maybe you want to take advantage of game correlation, and so you want to say at least 4 players from the same game, and then you do something that we call game stacking, something that you're going to hear a lot leading up to this NFL DFS season. But the great part about SaberSim is you actually don't need to do any of these things. And I really don't like doing these things because the problem is we don't know what rules are going to be optimal for specific teams or players or slates or anything. That's something that is going to be optimized through the correlations. And SaberSim actually takes correlations into account when it builds lineups. And the way that we do that is we actually are simulating every game 10,000 times, and we're calculating how players are correlated to each other. So for example, everyone knows this, but Patrick Mahomes is correlated to his receivers. So this is why you stack, is Mahomes is correlated with Sammy Watkins, he's correlated with Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, etc. And there's also a reason that people game stack. Why that's popular is you'll see that Patrick Mahomes is also correlated with D.D. Westbrook and Jeff Swaim, wide receivers who are on the opposing team. So that's a reason why game stacking is popular and why people like to make these stack rules where they say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to make all my lineups have 5 players from the same game. But the issue is with something like that or stacking rules is, well, what if you have something like Lamar Jackson where going naked is better with him or not pairing him with a wide receiver? Or maybe there's a particular game that's just not useful to stack because the opposing team is just not good enough, but you actually still want to use those lineups because there's some great value there. I don't want to have to make a rule that's going to control my builds in such a way where I'm not going to get some optimal lineups that don't follow those rules. And there's going to be a wide variety of lineups that you're going to get when you build with SaberSim. So instead, what I'm going to do is just trust SaberSim's correlations and then make adjustments later. And I'll show you this in a second. It's a really cool feature. So I'm setting correlation to high. I'd usually set ownership fade to higher during the season, but I keep it at low just to illustrate this more and not our other features. And then set smart diversity to high to take into account upside and get a wide variety of lineups. So I'm not going to build my lineup pool because I actually have already built my lineup pool. I did this before this video, so we didn't have to take that little time for them to build. And so now we have our build. So SaberSim does something really cool that gives you a lot of control over your lineups. And what they do is they actually, when you request to build 20, 150, 50 lineups, SaberSim actually builds you a lot more. They actually build you 1,500 lineups or even more. And the reason this is it allows us to give you some really great control over your lineups that you can actually just swap in players really easily by adjusting one thing or other, and it happens instantly. So for example, let's say it's Sunday morning and you have your lineups built, and then suddenly you see this tweet and it turns out Le'Veon Bell has some weird knee issue and there's some uncertainty around that, and he might not get the workload that you think he's going to get. And you say, oh, damn, Le'Veon Bell is my highest end player. That being said, oh man, I like all the adjustments that I like. I don't want to rebuild these lineups. I don't want to do something that's going to just completely change my lineup construction. Well, SaberSim gives you the ability to do that. So you can do it in a few ways. You could control Le'Veon Bell's max exposure. You could say, okay, you know what? I just want 30% Le'Veon Bell. Well, there we go. I now am just getting 30% Le'Veon Bell by setting that max exposure. You can also do something by adjusting his projection, which I like a little better, because for me, I just sort of say, let me try to project someone as best as possible. Let SaberSim do more of the work. So let's say, okay, 22 and a half. I'm going to say 19. Maybe he loses some snaps. Well, then we have Le'Veon Bell at 19, and we're getting about 29%. You can also do the same thing with raising someone's exposure on an individual level. So let's say you see Hunter Henry, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I just like him more than this, and I just wanted to get him more than 15% of my lineups. You'd either raise his projection like I did with lowering Le'Veon Bell's, or you can increase his min exposure. This is something that you might see with other lineup builders, and it's a cool feature. But SaberSim also takes this to another level in a very cool way. So there's actually 4 columns here. So we can adjust exposures to a lot of different things. So team stacks, we can actually adjust min and max exposures of lineups that have 2 players from the same team. So let's say we're like, oh man, New York Giants, I'm just not a huge fan of getting this much of them, even though maybe they're great value or there's some reason that we're getting them. I just don't want that much exposure, so I'm just going to make it so we only get 10% of them. So you can now make it so you only have 10% New York Giants stacks. And then you say, oh man, San Francisco, I'd actually like a lot more of them, or some more of them. I think they're going to be a great team, and maybe I just underrated projection, but I don't know who. Okay, let's just say let's raise their min exposure. So now I get 5% of San Francisco. And you can do things like that, and it's a really nice way of adjusting things on a team level instead of an individual level. And as you know, NFL sometimes, especially with quarterback and receivers, sometimes it's kind of like a dart throw, and you don't really like a particular receiver, and you sort of just want a balance of raising exposure to that team. And this is a great way you can do that without having to raise individual players. And I'm not even sure other lineup builders offer that factor. So this is just a great thing in addition. One thing I really love that we've just added is this game stacking feature. So I talked about game stacking in a previous video. It's the concept, and I talked about it a little bit today. It's the concept of basically having a stack from one game. Let's say you can see this in my first lineup. We have a stack of Eli Manning, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, and Evan Ingram from the Giants. Game stacking is where you have at least one player from the opposing team with that stack. So in this case, we actually have 2. We have Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. And for the reason they stated, that can be a really, really great way to construct a lineup. And as you can see, this is actually our best lineup, is one with a big game stack, which makes a lot of sense. So Saber has added this tool that actually lets you see what type of game stacks you're getting and then actually adjust the exposure to those game stacks. So we have a lot of Atlanta, Minnesota, and we have a lot of New York Giants, Dallas, which we seem to just like those 4 teams more than other places, or more than DraftKings salaries suggest. But let's say you say, I like to take the approach where I just want a wide variety of game stacks, and the fact that I'm even getting all these game stacks, I think it's giving me this inherent advantage, and I don't really want to take a stand. Well, okay, you can actually just lower your exposure just like you could do in the players page and the team stacks page. You can lower your exposure to actual game stacks. So let's say, okay, you know what? I just want 30% Minnesota, Atlanta. And you know what? I just want 20% New York Giants, Dallas. Well, now we have more of a balance. And let's say, okay, I want to raise my exposure to Detroit, Arizona a little bit. I want to raise my exposure to Indiana, LAC a little bit. And you can sort of get a nice balance of game stacks in a way that's really, really awesome. And how a lot of people who are making Millionaire Maker lineups or FanDuel Sunday Million lineups will try to do is they'll try to just get a wide variety of these game stacks. But SaberSim's the only place where you're going to have this pretty incredible control of what game stacks you're getting and how the variety is actually spaced out. So I think this is an amazing feature, something I'm really, really, really excited about. And it's going to really help you guys make these lineups in a way that's really, really smart. The last thing is you can set min and max exposure to certain stack types. So as you can see, our lineups have a pretty wide variety of stacks. And let me just explain to you what these things mean. So the first two things, the QB plus a number, means basically the offensive stack. So it's a QB plus how many X number of position players on that QB's team. So in this case, it's going to be QB plus a wide receiver and running back, or a wide receiver and tight end, or two wide receivers. This would be 3 position players. This would be just 1. And then we have this vertical line plus another number. That number is indicative of the game stack, so how many players you have from the opposing team. So if you actually look at this spread of stack types, you can see there's some game stacks, there's some not. There's some big stacks, there's some where it's just QB plus 1. There's a wide variety, and you can actually have control here as well. Let's say you say, you know, I feel like the perfect type of game stack is a QB plus 2 players from the other team. Okay, well, we can just raise this number and say, let's get 17% exposure instead. And you raise a few lineups. Let's say, you know what, I really just don't like these QB plus 4 things. I think that might be suboptimal. Well, I could just lower those to 0 and just get rid of them. And I get rid of them. And now we have the stack types we want, we have the game stacks we want, we have the team stacks we want, we have the players we want, and you basically have this control, this very quick control that you're just not going to be able to have if you're setting these rules before you build your lineups. Because if you set your rules before you build your lineups, that means maybe you're not going to get these QB plus 1 stack types that are actually some of the best lineups you can make because you're restricting it to only a QB plus 2. And maybe you're getting some of the lineups that don't need game stacks, that are not the best with game stacks, and you're avoiding them because you're requiring a game stack for every lineup. So I feel like the way that we control your lineup builds, actually doing it post-build instead of pre-build, gives you a lot more control, and it also gives you control with keeping those best lineups, those optimal lineups, still in the 150 that you build, because if you use those rules, you're just going to lose them. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I love these features. I think it's going to be great, especially on Sunday morning during the season when you have late news and you just don't have time to reset groupings, to do all these rules. There's so many of them. And you just want to change up your lineups a little bit. You don't want to change just everything. This is going to allow you to have control in a way that you're just not with other types of lineup builders. So I'm really, really excited for this to launch. I think it'll be out shortly. And we're still offering that 3-day free trial for any new SaberSim user. Try us out for 3 days. If you don't like it, which I promise you that's not going to be the case, you're going to like it a lot, then you can just cancel and it's free of charge. Otherwise, I hope you end up subscribing because I really do think we have the best lineup builder in the business. So Hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet me at MaxJSteinberg. You can also talk to me in our SaberSim Slack channel. It's a really, really exciting time. I wish you guys the best of luck.